it's it's how we value what we create that actually gets the attention of the person that's looking for it. So as creatives, I think it's understanding Bitcoin is almost like a rite of passage to become confident in who we are and why we do what we do. The Australian government just passed some laws that are now redesigning capital gains taxation, and it is really grim. And day to day, I just keep getting feedback from my friends that it is harder and harder. To have a mortgage is a serious commitment, and you tether yourself to the negligence in the market, whether you like it or not. And so Bitcoin for me will disrupt everything. I believe the frequency of real creation, real creators cannot be AI'd or engineered, and the sense around that, whether it be music, dance, art, performance, I believe will be in its own way a more desired and appreciated currency in the future, where we will get to ask for Bitcoin based on the value of what we create.
Welcome to Share Your Bitcoin Journey. I am Dion Wilson, founder and executive director of Bitcoin for the Arts, the first 501c3 supporting artists with Bitcoin grants, education, and sovereign funding tools. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with an Australian interior designer, the founder of Kintore Design, and one of the most respected voices in high-end residential design in the New South Wales coast. Known for his uncompromising materiality, his small batch furniture work through his brand Matt and Kin, and his clear advocacy for sound money inside the design world. His Woollahra Residence project was published in the Local Project and Artedomus for the level of craft and intention in the work. He runs Matt and Kin on walnut and cast bronze pieces made to outlast the buyer. He has spoken publicly about Bitcoin as a store of value alongside real estate, and brings the framework of going where you're treated best to his thinking about life and work. In this conversation, he shares his personal journey from designer to Bitcoiner, how the materials he chooses for his clients and the conviction he holds for Bitcoin point in the same direction towards things made to last. We talk about what his high net worth design clients are actually saying about the Australian dollar, what a Bitcoin native client of the future looks like, and what a design career on the Bitcoin standard could be. His story is grounded, articulate, and full of practical wisdom for any maker or craft person who has ever felt the pressure of the fiat erosion on the work they are trying to create. Without further ado, let's welcome to the show James Kintore.
Gracias, Dion. Pleasure to be here.
James, welcome to Share Your Bitcoin Journey. Before Kintore Designs, before Matt and Kin, before any other work people know you for, there was a kid who eventually became a designer. Tell us where that story starts.
Well, the story starts in a rural environment. Australia has a lot of open spaces, as many know. It's a small population, large continent. I grew up in an agricultural area in South Australia, and my father was a farmer, a broad-acre farmer, and I established my life as a boy through sports and through nature. I was I'd say a sensitive, a romantic dreamer as a kid, so I was quite intuitively moving through the world, observing a lot. And, the aspects that I guess observed within myself growing were the creative tendencies to, um, I guess, allow a process to really come to pass. So when I was young, I would, often find myself re um, restyling my room. I would like go through the different processes of like just moving everything around. And, for me, that was kind of like um, an early awakening of just how space affected how I felt. And so it was quite intuitive.
Mm.
In school, I really thrived in the creative subjects, art, music, and technical studies, which were, I guess, my entry into woodwork and metalwork and different, skills of my hands. So, a creative process is something that I guess has kind of helped shape my philosophy this far. And yeah, always really interested in you know, creative projects as a boy. Yeah, it's really, really obvious to me now.
So would you say there was like a singular thing that kind of happened, like a moment in time, maybe like the house you talked about that you changed your room, but was that the influence, or was it maybe like a building? Where was that first trigger point of inspiration that really made you kind of like think a little bit about, what you were spending your time doing?
Yeah, well, I would say for me, often what I've realized that it's often many points. It's often lots of little um, processes or insights that actually come in and inform, how I've evolved as a creative and how I've learned really how to show up in the world as a designer, as an artist, as somebody that approaches, nearly everything that I do with a certain philosophy. And so um, I think when I was growing up, there were both the aspects of being outside a lot, being close to nature, having a father that took us camping a lot, took us exploring a lot, created a framework for my imagination to really explore. That was something that I think really imprinted in me early. And as I started to like become, you know, visual and like expressive in my mind, that started to affect the ways that I wanted to use my hands, whether I would build something, whether I would draw something. So art and making things, and then my love of guitar and singing and music were the three passions that I grew up with and have still carried with me to this day. So I'd say there were a lot of small insights that shaped me rather than one pivotal moment. There were I look back and can just see little points of observation that I guess supported me on my path.
Walk us through how you actually became a designer, your formal training, who you worked under early on, what you learned about how the work actually gets made before you ever started Kintore.
hmm It's an interesting question. What I love about design is I've come to understand it as both something that you can learn and something that you can evolve and intuit. And I have found that the natural disposition to designing things is more to do with a curious willingness to observe. And for me, my career has evolved through a series of, I guess, evolutions. And so when I was going through and finishing my school, I was either going to go to art school, I was going to be a musician, or I was going to pursue, technical studies, which in my case, I think I was late in my like tertiary years, which in America it's like, I guess, seniors or something like that.
Hmm.
I was approached by actually a connection of the family who was a fine furniture maker. And so he actually offered me my first job, which was an apprenticeship in fine furniture. And so at that time, I would say, as a young boy, I was not necessarily clear on one path only. I was kind of just trying to find a place to start and and get going on my career, trajectory, I guess. So I chose to start that apprenticeship, and that was a period of 5 years, and that was like that would have been the main shaping of like my craft, how to work with wood, my understanding of interior architecture, and it informed a lot of my design intuition, which has actually been something that's grown over time and grown through experience. And confidence for me has come through doing the work. So I got to understand how homes are built. I got to understand how interior architecture gets structured. I got to understand how to design it, how to create a concept. And then I also, got to learn how to actually make it, which was in hindsight, a really well-rounded skill set. I was lucky enough to work for some very special clients, which often they aren't easy to find, but you have certain clients that have the appreciation for this type of work, and then they have often, a business or some process and lifestyle that allows them to invest heavily in people that they network with and have relationships with. So I had some clients really see a lot of potential in me and with my boss, and so we made some really exquisite pieces early. I remember working with 24 karat gold leafing, all the different jig work, and really fine furniture is quite a detailed process in itself. But I was able to get an exposure to a lot of key areas in the residential game, and then over the years, I started developing my own properties. So I would buy a place, and I built one when I was 18, and then I started to like buy places and renovate them. And then over time, I started to really, really intuit the interior design approach to my philosophy, the way that I eventually, started Kintore Design. And yeah, it was a gradual evolution of acquiring skill sets, and that eventually amounts to confidence, which in the design game, confidence is really, really important.
So, was there a particular project that made you say, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life?
Well, I always look at my years on this planet and say I've already lived 3 lifetimes, and there's so many unique little times where I've actually done a few different things. So whether it's be designing, developing, I also run a fashion company before, and so I was always kind of in a few different fields and learning what I could. Um, from a design perspective, I would say that it would have been in my late 20s, after I'd completed quite a few of my own development projects and started to understand what I could create from the vision of something that was needing work or had potential, and bringing that to fruition. So by the time, I was sort of late 20s, early 30s, I'd started to, quite surprisingly develop a really distinct confidence and design philosophy, which has continued to be refined until this day. And so, when it says when I think about what I'll do forever, I would say I'm always going to be creating forever. What I create, yeah, that's a really intuitive, beautiful flow. It's many things, I guess.
Spoken like a true artist.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, out of all the things that came, Kintore Designs and then Matt and Ken, for listeners hearing your name for the first time, what's the work today and what's the standard you hold yourself to?
So Kintore Design was my, I guess, design business that I guess it emerged out of after a season of traveling. I came back to Sydney, and I was ready to, you know, kick back into, my field of experience. And Kintore Design was more of a an evolution of these really magical connections. I met this really special client that ended up being the project that you mentioned, and through that particular client, I was able to build a relationship with that allowed both Kintore Design in that evolution, in that I guess that form. It's a little bit different now, and Matt and Kin to actually be birthed. So Matt and Kin is a collaboration with a dear friend of mine, Matt. So
Mhm.
we were friends, and I had landed this really special design job where I got to remodel every aspect of the interior of a really lovely home in Sydney's eastern suburbs. And through the relationship with that client, I was able to unlock, through building relationship confidence, I was able to unlock the ability to design and create a full range of furniture. Now, Matt and I were working together. We started to collaborate a little bit, and then we had this job where we were able to really go for it. And so we created about 40 pieces of furniture for this same client that I was designing the home for, and that was I guess a process of collaboration that is was really organic. Matt was a well, Matt is a very special maker in his own right. He studied uh, what is it, technical engineering or something at university, and he's one of the most brilliant makers that I've come across. And so he and I started Matt and Kin, and over the time we just slowly developed, quality, a philosophy, and that was enabled by the right clients. And so a part of being able to do amazing work is really learning to tune into the right client, and when the moment's right, share more about your philosophy and actually bring a client into a story, into something that they can actually really invest in themselves. So yeah, I think that's answered the question, but both are uniquely collaborative. Kintore Design is kind of evolving into something new now as we speak. So yeah.
How did you first find Bitcoin? Was there a specific moment, a
Mhm.
specific person, a specific experience that planted the seed?
hmm Yeah, well, when it comes to Bitcoin, Dion, that is a journey of some real moments of clarity. My background in finance in general, as I've shared a little bit about, was working in the property market. Buying a property, doing it up, selling it, and then in my late 20s, mid 20s, I had a fashion business. I was learning a bit of that at the same time. So I was refining over that time, and always obvious. It was always obvious in hindsight, but I was like curiously looking, what is it about the property market that goes up, goes down? How do I actually learn about something that really affects me when I buy and sell a house? Because what I experienced was, in a hot market, I bought a place and I could sell something and do really well. But in a down market, even with my skill sets of creating value in a home, it was still actually hard to make a profit. So I got to like sort of test both worlds, and then I started to get more interested in what actually is behind this economic momentum, because it seems to be hard to figure out, even for me, who someone who's practicing it. So those seeds were rolling. I was quite successful with the fashion business in my 20s, and so I actually was able to experience, a higher level of like income and different things for the first time. That was also really interesting when it comes to managing and thinking about money. And so I think it was 2017 I started exploring gold, because I instinctually thought that the property market was hot and potentially, uh, out of control in terms of the upside. And I've proven to be very wrong, because it just keeps going. But in 2017, I was exploring these ideas, and I then traveled all of 2019, and then coming back 2020, we all know what happened then, COVID. And so in
Mhm.
Australia, the lockdowns were quite severe, and I had to, um, you know, remain, at home, and that was kind of like the energy that I'm not sure whether it was COVID in itself or just the observation of the marketplace. I thought property was going to go down, and it went up. And I had a friend ring me to spruik a local Australian crypto project, and he said to me, he said, "Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's like buying Bitcoin at this price." And I was like, Bitcoin. Actually, I haven't really looked into that much. So that was kind of the seed that actually got sown for me to explore Bitcoin. And when I started listening to some podcasts and started doing some research, I had the time. And Dion, it was like the scales falling off my eyes. I just couldn't believe it. I was like researching, and all of these inclinations about the economy were starting to make a bit more sense. And I just, really, I guess, got orange pilled through my own process of curiosity and using, I guess, my senses of what I thought was happening to actually learn through the process of understanding Bitcoin. And so I started in investing what I could in 2020 in Bitcoin. And I'm 1,000 hours now into the rabbit hole, and I consider myself, quite a hardcore, passionate person about this technology. Very exciting. Very exciting.
Let's talk a little bit because you said a mouthful there. Let's unpack that moment where you said you initially, due to COVID, you expected the real estate market to go down,
I did.
but then it went up.
Hmm.
So that is a sign of what we have in the inflation environment of our economy being controlled by a centralized authority.
Hmm.
It's almost like these given moments where even a person like you who spent time in finance, you understand the landscape, you understand how the market moves, but yet something like that took place. And it's almost like a signal that no matter even what we think, because there is a central authority in control, even our normal expectations can be altered at any given moment in this system because the way the system is designed, it is designed to be controlled.
Hmm.
So, we spend so much of our time trying to find ways to navigate through the system. And I'm hearing the same story over and over. We all come to Bitcoin because there was some financial instability that we were trying to figure out how to navigate our way around. And we get hit with these ex unexpected things that happen that don't correlate with how the market should work. And then you realize, well, probably because it's all being controlled anyway.
Hmm.
And then you come to realize the magnitude of what Bitcoin brings and what makes Bitcoin so unique and so different. And this is why I have engaged in starting this foundation to help artists really understand what Bitcoin is and why we need Bitcoin, because so many of us are doing the same thing you're doing. We're trying to find ways to navigate our way through the system to create a better way for ourselves. And then you realize that even no matter how hard you try, you study hard, you learn the system, you learn how to be flexible as a creator. You create for your clients, you create for their expectations. You're putting yourself in a position to create value, and yet
Hmm.
still somehow your value is being taken away from you.
Correct.
It's the most remarkable thing. Out
Correct.
of every Bitcoiner has that moment. Would you say that there was a specific moment in your profession where Bitcoin went from that interesting thing to an obvious thing?
Yeah. Yep. That 2020 period where COVID happened, I owned a property, and I expected the economy to fall apart. And then I watched the craziness of the money printing in Australia and the government liquidate, the future of the country basically to allow people to sit at home and you know pay their bills and different things. It was such a strange time, but what happened in those months is, with the podcasts that I was listening to, I was starting to understand money for the first time from a foundational level, and I started to like put language to my instincts because I knew something in the system was weird. I knew I could feel something was unsustainable, and Bitcoin was the education that allowed me to understand how governments were creating the great illusion, in my opinion, especially as an Australian. Um, so, yeah, it was that period of time. I would say that
Mhm.
4 months, I was a long way down the rabbit hole of becoming awake to the system that was unfolding before my eyes.
Interior design is built on long time horizons.
Hmm.
European oak, walnut, cast bronze, materials that gain patina and outlast the client.
Hmm.
When did Bitcoin start to feel like the same logic at a different layer?
Yeah, I mean, once I started to understand um, energy and the world's, um, it's like a natural law. The world itself is is energy reliant. And when I started to understand that everything is energy, when I started to like explore this concept of like a time chain, rules, code, for me, materiality is nearly the most important choice in any design. Materiality is what speaks for it's long beyond when the architect's there, when the designer's there. Like, materiality wears to life a certain kind of way. It tells a story. It is in itself a time chain, which is what I love about materiality. I love materials that that grow a patina, that they change over time. For me, the core essence of like time being beautiful is something that I really feel a sense of kinship with Bitcoin. This concept of being able to like take something and lock away your time preference for however long it is that you want. Like, for me, Bitcoin is like it's like mining, precious metals. It's like mining something of real value, because whether it's timber or whether it's stone or whether it's all of these beautiful materials we have, Bitcoin is this digital commodity that I believe can bring about the same process of like appreciation and romance and like protection for your time, for your value, for your relationship to energy. And I like the accountability that Bitcoin brings. I really do. And it's the same with materials. We are all held accountable to how we work with it, how we respect it, how we learn about it and appreciate it.
Your furniture brand, Matt and Ken, makes small batch pieces with walnut and cast
Mm-hmm.
bronze, made to outlast the buyer. So
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin's has a 21 million cap that is
Mm-hmm.
pretty much the same move, but at a different scale.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some conviction running both
Definitely.
the
Well,
understanding of the hard cap that Bitcoin brings and the principles that align with what you're building?
well, I like how you say principles, because I think Bitcoin is a principled time chain. It's a every nuance or insight into Bitcoin is something that I think is aligned with nature, with natural law, with like the beauty that's all around us. We we worked on this really special restaurant in the Adelaide Hills, in South Australia, that's just opened. Actually, Matt and I were able to source and locate a very, very special, you know, what do you call it, log or quantity of wood. And we were looking for some oak to build a 4.5 meter table. And we found in the middle of Victoria, Matt found a YouTube clip that was 10 years old, and we watched it. And he realized that there was some oaks, some French oak slabs hidden amongst this guy's lumber yard, 10 years old. Matt managed to track this guy down and find that he still had this French oak log. Now, we found out that this log was cut down in Paris some 25 years earlier, and the guy had bought it through a French girl that was traveling, that was working for him for the time. He brought it to Australia and had this for 25 years. And we got to acquire the most unbelievable pieces of wood that were already 250 years old. We got to build a table for a chef, a restaurant owner, that from the heart of Paris, we created a 4.5 meter timeless table that will only get better with age. And that for me is how I feel about Bitcoin. Wood is something that when it's cared for, it only gets better, and it's an exquisite materiality. And so that kind of romance and that weight of like these stories is, for me, how Bitcoin helps me protect my life and build on something worth building on, a solid foundation, as I like to put it. So yeah, I love the correlation.
That's amazing. I mean, that is, yeah, that's the perfect correlation because as time goes, as you take care of that wood, as
Hmm.
it preserves its value, and not only does it preserve its value, it actually gets better quality. Quality improves. I mean, that is the exact same principles with Bitcoin. So it makes perfect sense for
Hmm.
someone working in your profession to
Hmm.
really come to terms and understand the value system that Bitcoin brings. Uh, so let's talk a little bit about your clients. So you build for high net worth clients in Sydney's most expensive postcodes. What are those clients actually saying privately about the Australian dollar, about real estate, and about Bitcoin?
It's really interesting. I think it's like any demographic, people that have accrued a high net worth, that have successful businesses, that live in beautiful suburbs. It is interesting because they do often have their finger on the pulse of a certain industry or a certain profession at a high level. This one of my, really important clients was a doctor, and so getting to know him over a period of 2.5 years, I was able to like observe how the medical industry works, the pressure associated. I got to observe a man that was very creative, that worked incredibly hard in an industry that asked a lot of him, and what he had was, he had a good income and he had a beautiful home. But what he was really craving in life was the ability to express himself through his house, through his love of cooking. And for me as a designer, this was one of the great learnings, that relationship is actually the foundation that we can really build anything lasting on. Relationship is like Bitcoin. It's like a frequency match. It's like something that we can build a road ahead based on a set of rules that two people can agree to. And a relationship is like that. It's two people agreeing to what's getting exchanged, the energy. And so I got to spend a lot of time with his client. I got to learn who he is, what he enjoys. And then as a designer, my philosophy and what I bring to creating a home, it becomes the process of creating for him, not for me, not for my ego of what I want to do, or how I want to be perceived in the marketplace. It was a real privilege to like look at this man and go, how do I create a representation of him And that was a really beautiful process, whether it was creating the furniture or creating the home. But in the end, I was able to say, I achieved, and the greatest achievement of this project was not, the industry acclaim or whatever it was. It was actually like my client felt well represented with what I was able to choose for him and create for him, and he felt included in the process, and he felt like it was part of him. And for me, that was a real, I guess, a learning experience that was special for me, and it's something that I carry into the decisions I make further, and understanding what else I want to do. So
Australian residential design lives on the back of leveraged real estate.
oh yeah.
Clients who borrow to buy and renovate. If Bitcoin compresses the real estate premium over the next decade, what changes for designers like you?
Well, this is kind of one of my most favorite subjects to talk about, mainly because I have such strong opinions about the Australian residential real estate market, and I'm super critical, I'm not going to lie. And from someone that's actually, done well in that climate for many years, I've watched the country become completely obsessed with residential and commercial real estate. And Australia is a country that all they talk about is real estate. Who's buying this? And it's become this crazy marketplace where everybody's struggling to get on the ladder or trying to survive. The gap is really, really interesting. And so for me, the Australian market's really vulnerable because it is a one-trick pony. Australia, for whatever reason, has mismanaged the opportunities it did have 20 years ago, and I don't believe has the foresight or the luxury to pivot in any way at this stage. So all they have is the ability to try and keep the confidence in the marketplace and print money to keep that going. And so for me, it's a really interesting space to watch now that I'm in Costa Rica. I'm no longer attached to that process, but Bitcoin, I think, as people start to understand scarce value, property to many people is scarce. Property to many people is secure, but for me, that is a bit of an illusion because property is a place to sleep, but unless you own it, there's costs to maintain it. It is quite a difficult juggle, and a life with a mortgage is a significant stress than a life without a mortgage. That's something I've experienced through many different seasons. With a mortgage, life has a different kind of weight, and that's a responsibility we have to take seriously. To have a mortgage is a serious commitment, and you tether yourself to the negligence in the market, whether you like it or not. And so Bitcoin for me will disrupt everything. And I believe very firmly the Australian property market, once people understand that their assets, their illusion of work, their illusion of wealth is unfortunately just that.
It's really, like you said, an unfortunate situation. And it's not just Australia, it is the global economy.
Yes.
Because here in America, it is the same principles. We value real estate because this is what we have been taught for the
Correct.
last 75 years, that this is the way to build wealth. And it
Mm-hmm.
has been the way to build wealth. It's
Has.
been the way to build wealth in an inflationary system, and in a
Mhm.
system where we are constantly adding more dollars into the system. We overvalue the properties. And
Correct.
we as a society on a global level have come to accept this as normal behavior
Mhm.
and as the standard way of operating.
Mhm.
And what Bitcoin is teaching us is that we had it wrong.
Yeah.
We've had it wrong. And I'm sorry. I know it's a heartbreaker. I know it's hard to accept, but Bitcoin is here and it's showing us that, sorry, we did not have a sound money system. We completely misaligned our evaluations and we valued the wrong things in the wrong way.
Correct.
Yes, property is valuable. We all love beautiful homes. They all can be sacred. They all can have their own unique things that are not similar to the next property. But at the same time, the evaluation system is incorrect. And
Very
that is
incorrect.
what Bitcoin has taught us.
Hmm.
And we are just going to keep saying it over and over and over until the ones that are close to us understand what we are saying.
Yeah.
That's
Love
all we can do, is keep
it. Hmm.
trying.
Hmm.
Australia has a complicated relationship with money, banks closing accounts, the Austrac scrutiny, restrictive crypto banking. What is it like running a design business and holding Bitcoin in that environment?
Well, before I moved to Costa Rica, it was becoming more and more difficult. I just had a conversation with one of my best friends. He and his wife are doing really well. Both have a secure job. His wife is a teacher, quite experienced. He's an aircraft engineer. They own a house. They're doing well. They would like to get to 1 Bitcoin. She tried to start buying a decent amount of that the other day, and had her bank deny her 3 times, and had 3 conversations, and I still don't believe she's been able to like get her money into an account where she can buy that Bitcoin. So I've been out of Australia for a year, but I could see what was happening. And to run a business, to prioritize Bitcoin, the Australian government just passed some laws that are now redesigning capital gains taxation, and it is really grim. It is really grim for Australia in general, but as Bitcoiners, those that have to play within that system, that have to like build businesses and put away for their futures, it's very difficult. And day to day, I just keep getting feedback from my friends that it is harder and harder. And the banks seem to be slowing down people's access to be able to buy Bitcoin. It seems legitimately engineered to me.
Mm. We're both creatives whose work is ultimately paid for by wealthy patrons. Your
Hmm.
design clients, my dance audience.
Hmm.
Most Bitcoiners come from tech or
Hmm.
finance.
Hmm.
What does our seat in the room let us see that they miss?
Dion, I believe the future of Bitcoin, the future of value, is based on um, frequency and the authenticity of how something's created. I believe this in human experience is all an exchange of value at some layer or level. And I believe Bitcoin has been controlled and mostly figured out with tech. And I believe tech is obviously such a big part. But I believe the world that's evolving and the future of the world will be up to the creators of value. And so I think artists that can come to terms with the concept of value and exchange are positioned maybe more than others to actually make the most of a Bitcoin future, because Bitcoin is an energy agreement, and creation is an energy agreement, and it's how we value what we create that actually gets the attention of the person that's looking for it. So as creatives, I think it's understanding Bitcoin is almost like a rite of passage to become confident in who we are and why we do what we do. To create and find somebody in agreement with that is, I believe, a real opportunity that we have in the future, and where AI is changing the world, and online creation is going to change with it. I believe the frequency of real creation, real creators, cannot be AI'd or engineered, and the sense around that, whether it be music, dance, art, performance, I believe will be in its own way a more desired and appreciated currency in the future where we will get to ask for Bitcoin based on the value of what we create.
Mm, I love that. You just threw out a new term that I haven't heard before in the Bitcoin space too. The what did you say? The energy. Uh that was
Which,
good. That was say that
yeah,
you said, gosh, I forgot it that quick, but you said something about an energy agreement. I like
um,
that.
yeah,
An energy agreement. Yes, this is totally Bitcoin is an energy agreement. And you know what? Here's what I think people are not saying about AI. I think we shouldn't really be afraid of AI. I think AI is
no,
going to enhance what we can do. And
it
I
definitely,
think
yeah,
AI ultimately increases the value of real human engagement.
that's
It
what I was saying. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so let the AI tools come. We need them. We can use them only to advance the real experience that you get when you're with a real person.
The real Dion, the real experience will be exponential. And so as artists in the future, because of the value that we create, we will choose to receive Bitcoin for the work that we do. I believe the power swing will come back to the creators because in the artificial world, artificial money, this and that, all of those efficiencies will create some value, some noise, but real creation, when we are the ones stewarding that energy, we will be able to say, hey, this is what I'm creating. People will want that. They will want that
Mhm.
exchange. And they will we get to say, hey, I want to get paid in Bitcoin.
You've spoken publicly about going where you're treated best.
Hmm.
What does living that out actually look like for you in the studio?
Yeah. So when I so what I in 2025 I made the hard decision to pivot the projects that I had in Australia and move to Costa Rica. I had a mentor here, and I was, I guess, even subconsciously looking for an alternative to Australia. Australia was a place that was just heading in a direction that I was uncomfortable with. And even at times, I didn't understand what I was feeling. I started to, find over time that I wanted to reshape my future from a different jurisdiction. So choosing Costa Rica was a decision based on a few factors. One, my mentor and connections here, my spiritual path and the opportunities that I see here for that. Creatively, Costa Rica presents a new place to build and to network and to build relationship. And Bitcoin is really exciting in Costa Rica. I'm living life not fully on Bitcoin, but very close. And so there are some apps and there are some community projects. Bull Bitcoin is one. There's a place in Uvita called Bitcoin Jungle. There's some really incredible local projects here in Costa Rica that give me real life options to pay bills daily. There's a payment scheme in a payment system in Costa Rica called Simpay. I can use that through my Bull Bitcoin app. It converts my Bitcoin to colones, their local currency, and I can pay into any bank um, or institution here in Costa Rica. It is really exciting what's happening here, and so all the levels, career, spiritual, physical, it's beautiful, and monetary philosophy, Bitcoin. Costa Rica has a lot to offer.
Shout out to Costa Rica. They're doing some wonderful things in building out the Bitcoin economy.
Hmm.
What would you say to a young Australian designer, maker, who today thinks Bitcoin is something of a tech thing and has nothing to do with their craft?
I think I think like on the relationship piece that I was talking about earlier, community is another really important aspect to how we build a future. For me, in whatever career, design, construction, relationships and community become a really important part of the network that you can rely on and that you can lean on as times change. And so in Australia, my encouragement would be to network in a way that allows you to gain skills and gain support from a few different levels of understanding, both in Bitcoin and in the residential game. I think from a design space, getting to know the industry away from the computers in vital. Understanding how to interact with tradespersons, really getting to know how a design is engineered and executed. It's the same with Bitcoin. Understanding how you can like adapt your banking needs and your abilities to cold store and move your Bitcoin more sovereignly and protect yourself. I think it is difficult in Australia, but that would be my encouragement to network with other Bitcoiners, because together people will look to create alternatives and results, and there's a support system there. And I think for Australia, community will be important moving forward as the underbelly of the economy rattles a little bit, especially because it's so vulnerable.
5 years from now, Kintore Designs, Matt and Ken, James personally, where do you want to be and how does Bitcoin sit inside that picture?
So currently moving to Costa Rica, it's an opportunity for me to reinvent many aspects of my career. And I like to say, in a way, further step into alignment with who I'm becoming and what I want to do. So um, part of my career is I've been always coming out in a way to being an artist. And so being a furniture maker, a designer, all these different labels, really how I've always wanted to speak about myself is say, hey, I'm an artist. And so what I'm doing at the moment is layering in some Kintore design elements, some contracting, some networking to like do, a handful of jobs in the residential game here. I'm going back into my woodworking skills to start exploring sculpture, and so I'm wanting to like pursue expressions more as a fine artist, even painting. Getting back into playing some music, and also working on a project which is a collection of musings and writings and poems over the last 15 years. I have a body of work that I'm working on, and it represents a time in my life. It's like a timestamp, and so I want to finish these little projects and keep exploring without having to do any one thing with any full time, in a sense of that's my one thing. So I want to explore gently into this new season, and so yeah, that's where I see myself in 5 years. I think I'll be a teacher, an artist, somebody passionate about life and building everything. And I mean everything on Bitcoin. All of my structures are on Bitcoin. My future is firmly focused on building economically on Bitcoin. That's where I'm at.
Where can our viewers find you?
So I have a little Instagram at Kintore Design, and there's a website that I'm finishing, so that's no good at the moment. So yeah, maybe Instagram is the best place just to get a little glimpse of what I do, and I'm in the process of just creating more, more of my projects and putting them out there bit by bit. So yeah, that's probably the best.
Last question. We
Hmm.
ask every guest this on Share Your Bitcoin Journey. If a
Hmm.
$500 to $2,000 Bitcoin micro grant from Bitcoin for the Arts landed in your wallet tomorrow, what would it unlock for you as a creator?
For me, it's it would definitely be put towards unlocking how do I finish my book. So I've basically, that project is something really important to me to finish, and sometimes the process of creation, having a vision and finishing that's you know interesting for us as artists. So for me, that book is what I want to finish, and so using a using some extra sats to like push that into working with an editor or exploring self-publishing. That's kind of where I'm at. So that's what I would say.
Thank you for joining us today, James. Thank you to our viewers and listeners. This is another episode of Bitcoin for the Arts. Share your Bitcoin journey. Please visit the website bitcoinforthearts.org and do support. Thank you.
Gracias, Dion.